Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Art of Faith. We're starting this brand new series in which we're going to focus on creativity in the Muslim community. All too often, parents seem to drive their kids towards subjects which are more safe, which will earn a wage packet. And the creative arts and the humanities tend to be discarded as unsafe professions. But tonight, with me in the studio, I have two young ladies, two entrepreneurial young ladies. One is Farah Azam, who is a henna artist, and ostensibly her marketing manager-in-chief, brand manager, Rabia Qureshi. Now, Rabia's passed her degree in marketing in the University of Hertfordshire, and Rabia herself is actually a psychology degree, qualified psychology degree expert, whatever.
She is.
Yeah. So this is Farah Azam, who is a psychology degree qualified person, but not a henna artist. You didn't do henna at university?
No, I didn't. I studied psychology and I wanted to initially get into psychotherapy, but got married, had a baby straight away, and I wasn't able to dedicate that many hours to studying psychotherapy. So I wanted to do something a little bit more creative, looked into art, and then I thought henna was quite interesting to do because it's got Islamic roots and I'm from an Islamic background. So.
And did you do this, were you doing this before you finished your degree? Or?
No, I'd actually never done henna in my life. The most I'd ever done with art was probably doodling in lessons.
And so, did you actually join an academy or something?
I did, yes. I joined the Ash Kumar Academy. Ash Kumar is actually the world-leading henna artist. He's very famous. So I thought if I'm going to do this, I'd like to do it with the best. I did a 5-day intensive course, and yeah, it just all went from there, really. Now,
the connection between art and Islam is quite powerful, but quite often, again, I find that there's a degree of paranoia and limitedness amongst a lot of very conservative Muslims about the use of art within Islam. Henna itself has got a fascinating history. Can you tell me a little bit about the connection of henna within the Islamic tradition?
Henna was used in the Prophet's days. Our Prophet used henna. It's actually a sunnah, and there's actually a really nice story that
I saw on the internet.
Yeah, Rabia, if you could share that story with us.
I don't know where the story is derived from. I remember reading it, and it was quite beautiful, really. The Prophet was approached by a woman from behind a curtain, I think, and she put her hand out to attract his attention or get his attention, and he couldn't identify whether this person was male or female. So he asked the person to go away and paint their nails with henna, so that he could associate this person with femininity, which is quite a beautiful story, really.
And the use of henna, is it something in the traditions which is there about the Prophet using it?
Yeah, there are reports of him using henna, and you know, it's a sunnah. In a lot of people believe it's a sunnah to wear henna.
Now, your use of henna is quite interesting. But I'm going to come on to the actual details. But what really motivated, what really inspired you to take it up in the way that you have now?
I think it was just the fact that henna is traditionally used on the body, and I find it beautiful, but I don't necessarily like it on the hands. So I wanted to do something a little bit different with it because the designs themselves are really beautiful. And I just wanted to sort of do something really unique with it and just change people's perception of what they usually associate henna with. It's usually, you know, there's usually the Mughal Indian designs, and I've sort of tried to mix it up with really random things.
And the thing is, there are so many things that you can express geometrically, because geometry and patterns have been traditionally linked to Islamic art.
Yeah.
Is that something that inspires you?
I haven't looked into that just yet. I'm inspired by quite a lot of Islamic art, but I haven't looked into that yet.
Can you tell us some of the kind of art that you'd like to use within your kind of style now?
Ones I haven't used so far. I get a lot of inquiries about Islamic calligraphy, and I've thought about incorporating that into my work, but I have to learn that, and at the moment I'm trying to focus on this. And I was thinking about maybe collaborating with somebody else, or we'll see how that goes. But I do get a lot of people asking about calligraphy.
So, Rabi, how difficult is it to market an artist, especially an artist with Islamic perception, in Islamic kind of themes in Britain?
I think within your own culture, it's probably more difficult because the thing that pROG is doing, for example, is so common and it's not as appreciated as it would be, say, for example, we've targeted it more to a Western audience. So we're in places like Hampstead and Highgate is where we would do our events, predominantly London-based. So to get out there was not as difficult as it would be to our own kind of culture because it's much more appreciated. People don't know about it, so you get to approach them without any expectations from them to start with. Whereas within our own culture, because there's so many people doing it, to try and show that you're doing it from a different angle, it's quite difficult.
Now, it's interesting. Hampstead is quite a Jewish area, you know, our Abrahamic cousins. So you've taken quite an interesting area to go and introduce almost like an Islamic style art. How did they react? Do you have any anecdotes, any stories that you can share with us about when you first started presenting it out there?
At first, well, the first event that I did was actually in Highgate, which is quite close to Hampstead, and it was one of my best events that I've ever done. Like, I sold very, very well, and the response there's amazing. Like, people know who I am there, you know. They don't have any other henna artists around that area, so if there's a henna artist coming to one of the events, everybody knows that it's going to be me. There's a gift store in Hampstead, which is on the high street, and they actually buy from me as well, and they sell out quite quickly as well, so I'm guessing they really like my products there.
Sorry.
I was going to say it's brilliant because the audience there automatically want to be educated on what henna is, where it comes from, the difference between the type of hennas they've seen, what are these designs, so they like to know the story behind the design.
They're definitely a lot more interested in sort of where henna came from, how it's made, you know, where the designs are inspired from. You know, they ask a lot of questions, which is good.
And so what are your answers? Do you usually raise the issue of Islam and the history or?
Yeah, we do. We tell them a little bit about the history, where it came from, and then we link it to our own religion and, you know, how it's inspired us, and yeah, and they love it.
So indirectly, you're kind of teaching people a little bit about
It's a form of education without realising it.
Definitely.
Yeah, so again, the education as perceived by Muslims generally, I mean, we tend to think of scholars teaching about Islam, and that's the way we learn about Islam. But this is an interesting thing, that creativity can also be an educational tool. Are you consciously using it as an educational tool?
Not consciously, no, to be honest, but I think our culture, I think our Islamic culture and heritage is absolutely beautiful, and I think a lot of us don't appreciate it. And I've been travelling quite a lot since I've been doing this, and when I visit places like Turkey and I go and visit the Blue Mosque, and there's just so much amazing art in those mosques, Islamic architecture, that really inspires me. So in that sense, I'm consciously aware of it. I suppose I am a bit.
Sure. And again, going back to the marketing of it, we'll come on to these inspirations again, because I think that's fascinating that you travel, which is another really interesting thing. But what's your plan in terms of being able to get pROG's work out more widely?
Well, at the moment we're only based in London, in the UK. We're really small. It's like 2 people, so we have to be realistic. We use a lot of social media to reach the wider audience, and we have a lot of fans actually based in the Middle East, which was quite surprising. So bearing that in mind, hopefully one day, inshallah, it will be able to reach a wider audience, maybe go worldwide, educate the whole international audience about the history of henna, where henna came from, why it's so beautiful, how it can be used, you know, a lot more freedom with it.
Have you thought about exhibiting in galleries here?
We have,
but we haven't done it.
It's not a road that we've taken yet.
Is it a problem?
No.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's just at the beginning we had a bit of an identity crisis because it was henna, and then there was the approach that we wanted to take with henna. So it's kind of a new concept. So we don't know where it fits in at the moment, and we know who it's appreciated by. So, for example, if we were to take it to a gallery that was predominantly Islamic art, would it fit in there? Or if it was just a gallery of modern British art and, you know, taken from Eastern influence, would it fit in there? So it's that kind of thing, but we're getting there, definitely.
So, how much does it cost? I mean, I'm going to go on to finances because that's quite important, because a lot of people don't relate art to making money. But you said earlier, Farah, that your paintings sold quite well in Hampstead. Do you mind me asking you what sort of prices people were willing to pay for these works?
Well, my paintings, they're not too expensive. The smaller canvases start at £18 and the more sort of medium-sized canvases are £42. And it's basically, it's bespoke, so you can have any size made. You know, I have done very large canvases before which have gone for sort of £70, £80. Yeah.
So very good. So a good start. And
yeah.
In terms of coming back to practicalities, because we're still talking about fitting all this in within your normal lives. And as a mum, how hard has it been for you to manage both sides of things?
It's been quite hard. At the beginning it was very hard because I was new to motherhood and stuff like that. But I'm very blessed to have my family are very supportive. They're very close to, they're just a few roads away from me. My husband's very supportive. So I get a lot of help in that sense. Also, what I do is when my son is asleep, I just basically take full advantage of that time, and that's when I do most of my work. When nobody's around, that's when I can concentrate and when all the ideas come in. So it's getting easier now, yeah.
If you had a message for the community, I mean, what would it be to help encourage the kind of thing that you're doing?
I think, well, in our culture, I think sometimes our parents want us to take the sort of science route, or, you know, because, you know, for obvious reasons, but I think that you need to be doing something that you really enjoy. I think that's very important, and I think that you're never going to put 100% into anything unless you really enjoy it. And at first I was a little bit uncertain about whether I wanted to do this, and I think I've come quite far, and I'm kind of glad that I did what I wanted to do. You know, and I think if you really want to do something, just go for it and work hard. And my dad always used to tell me the two things that will get you far are honesty and hard work, and that's what I try and follow.
You know, very Islamic values there.
Yeah.
But going back to your degree in psychology, how does the artwork help you on a personal level, do you think? I mean, I'm thinking about the emotions and various other things. I mean, you did a psychology course, so you're going to be quite aware of how people think, what people's problems are in current society. How did it help you, first of all?
I think that, you know, because I studied and, you know, getting married and just being sort of confined to the house and doing the whole kitchen stuff and looking after the baby, it wasn't, I think I did start getting a little bit depressed. I don't know if depressed is the right word, but I was getting a little bit, I was feeling a bit unhappy about that. I wanted to do something else, but I didn't want to sacrifice the time with my son. So I think that, you know, it
was therapeutic.
Yeah, it was therapeutic, and it sort of relaxes me. It stops me from having negative thoughts. You know, a lot of the time, especially with women, we're always thinking about negative things. You know, we're always getting stressed about little things in our everyday life. But this keeps me really focused on, you know, my artwork. It keeps me very focused. It stops me from having negative thoughts. And it's very therapeutic.
The way you're talking, it sounds to me almost like there are similarities to meditation. So when you're actually doing a piece of artwork, how do you feel?
I don't think about anything apart from what is going into that artwork. I can't think about anything else. I don't have any other thoughts running through my head. It's just full concentration, which is, it's something. I do think it's like meditation, because it's difficult to switch off from your everyday lives, and, you know, but I really do, and my whole focus goes into my work.
Sure. Now, where did you guys meet, and how did this relationship kick off? Because you see, artists aren't always necessarily good business people or entrepreneurs. They're quite, you know, they can be quite moody, quite inward-looking, and stressing about their own art. So, is that why your relationship with Rabia kicked off, or can you tell me a little bit about you guys?
We studied. We've known each other forever almost. We studied together at mosque when we were younger. Went to the same school. Then we parted ways to study at uni, but we've known each other
Since we were
ages,
kids.
literally, yeah.
So there was a natural bond and trust.
There
Yes,
was, yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
I think that was important for me. I mean, I wouldn't have just had anyone sort of work with me. I wanted someone that, you know, I really trust.
And it's quite nice, and the fact that you got to this stage where you actually done the artwork but started to get it out there is a really important transition, because most artists can end up just at that stage where they think, okay, I've done this piece of art, where do I go next? And am I good enough? They can go into all sorts of weird things. Is that a role that Rabia, did she play a role in motivating you?
Definitely. I mean, when I first started this, I was not confident at all, and Rabia was constantly telling me to start up a Facebook page, you know, put some pictures up, and I wasn't doing it. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do it, you know, no one's going to like it. She pushed me to do it. I did it. It started off with Facebook, and then it just sort of grew from there. And yeah, I think that played a huge role, because otherwise I don't think I would have done it.
So it really did need a little bit of encouragement and support. How did you feel? Did you feel that was a useful role you were playing, Rabia?
At the time, not really, because I was just being a friend, I suppose. But I think it's easy to lack self-belief because she's the one doing the artwork, so she doesn't have outside input. So obviously, as a friend, I'm going to tell her that her artwork is really beautiful, and she wouldn't believe me. But I think it wasn't such a great push, because her artwork it's fantastic.
You see, I'm very fascinated by the idea of young creative people expressing Islam through their arts.
Yeah.
Because all too often you're living in a country where Islam is misunderstood. What role do you think your art could play in terms of giving a positive impression of Islam? Rabia, I think that might be something for you, perhaps. I mean, the thing is, you get people constantly putting visual images of Islam and violence, for instance. Now, that's an advertising, marketing.
I see where you're coming from, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So you've got lots of visual images of Islam coming out as the bad guy, you know,
Yeah.
and suddenly if I find an image which actually counters that,
Yeah.
do you think art and the kind of art that you're doing could play a role in the mindset of people who don't know very much about Islam and have already been stereotyped?
Definitely, but I think initial reaction, what's come into my head is, if you were promoting something that, say, had in essence a message of peace, would people really associate that with Islam? We'd have to educate them that this derives from Islamic heritage, this image or this piece of artwork or this candle, even canvas. So that's my initial reaction. But it can definitely be done if everybody does it collectively. Obviously, it would be nice to contribute to it, definitely.
Sure. Now, we're going to turn to the actual artwork itself now, and just ask Faraz to perhaps talk us through a few of the pieces. I think she's provided half a dozen or so pieces that she's worked on, and we're going to see if we can get them to hold this on the screen. And okay, we have one here, Faraz. This is one that you made. What is this? What's the origin? What inspired you, and where is this coming from?
The design for this it's not just that I haven't just taken inspiration from one place. So you see the crystals in the middle, they're vintage style crystals, so they're associated with something quite English. Then you've got the big floral designs, which are taken from Persian art.
Is this one of them?
No, this one is actually, it's inspired by Iznik art, which is, I found when I went to Turkey, they have a lot of Iznik art in the mosques and stuff. And Iznik art is basically a mixture of traditional Turkish art with a bit of Chinese inspiration, which I thought was amazing. So that's what this is inspired by.
So it's the fusion of Islam arriving at the Chinese doorstep.
Yeah.
This is the kind of art that was evolved at that time.
Yeah.
And how much research did you have to do to come up with a piece like this?
I had to do a fair bit, not too much, because I just sort of visually took everything in. So I just took the pictures and, you know, just put everything together, put my ideas down.
And what were you trying to express with this? I'm just trying to get your own impression of it, really.
It's like a burst of colour.
I thought it looked a little bit like a Chinese dragon.
Okay.
At first glance, a couple of people did say that to me.
And was it a clear-cut plan that you worked to, or did it just evolve?
It kind of just evolved. I just put down a load of ideas and then I just sort of put them together.
I think if we could see the next one, we'd probably be able to switch over to the next piece. Again, that's back to the original one that we saw. So what have you, the difference between the henna you used here and there is that this seems to be more traditional from what I've seen before, colours that I'm used to. Those colours, you use some sort of dye?
No, I use acrylic paints to just sort of fill in some areas of, but the main design is always done in henna, but then sometimes I use certain colours to represent a certain type of art. So I used sort of a bluey, yellow and red, which is used a lot in the Iznik art, and yeah, the Iznik art that I mentioned, they use a lot of those colours. So
this one is very geometrical. This strikes me as being quite sort of Islamic inspired as well, because where Islamic art is generally associated with geometric and even patterns.
This one was made on your trip after she came back from Tunisia, so it may well be inspired.
Because there's a lot of geometric art in Tunisia.
So tell me about Tunisia. Did you go there to be inspired artistically?
Yeah, I did. I did. I visited a lot of the old sort of buildings, and I just took loads of photographs. I just took my big Canon camera with me, and I was just sort of snapping away. And there was a lot of this sort of art there, but I just sort of, again, mixed it up with sort of Indian, traditional Mughal art, you know, Islamic art. I just mixed everything together, and then I just put a touch of vintage in it with the little crystals.
Okay, we're going to switch over to the next piece, which I think is, this is... What is this?
This is a candle, which was one of my earlier pieces. This was more sort of for a Western market. It is quite traditional, but at the same time, it's quite open. It's not that intricate, so I'd say it's more contemporary, more for a Western market.
It almost looks like a Christmas bulb or sort of a candle. It almost strikes me as something quite Christmassy.
Well, the colours that I used on this were inspired by my wedding outfit because I used these colours. I was wearing these colours.
Okay. The dots that go in the middle remind me a lot of you get these kind of these eyes, nazar, and is that linked to a lot of that kind of art?
Not this piece, no. But I know what you're talking about. The Turkish evil eye thing. They use it to sort of fight off evil eye.
Seems to be everywhere in there. When I was visiting Turkey, Istanbul, it was certainly the evil eye seemed to be a big thing there.
Yeah,
interesting.
It was.
Here we've got another one of your paintings. It looks really fascinating. A guitar, a vase, and what is this done on? What sort of canvas? Is this a canvas?
Yeah, it's just a normal stretched canvas, and this design is Mughal sort of Indian design. Again, it's traditional, but I've tried to make it look contemporary with the borders and
very
stuff
intricate.
like that. It's quite intricate, and this is actually one of my best sellers.
How long did it take you, and how much did you sell that for?
I sold this piece for £42. It's 40 centimetres by 50, and I'd say this took me about 6 hours to do.
Okay, 6 hours. So fascinating. Do we have another one there? I think we've got another one coming up. With this, another set of candles?
Yeah, this was a more sort of vintage style piece. You can see I've got the English rose and, you know, sort of vintage heart. So this was more for like the Western English market. And, you know, I had a very good response from this range of products.
Is it very hard? I mean, when you're painting on candles, are there any problems with henna dripping or anything like that?
There isn't, but because the candle is sort of curved, it's difficult to get the design on. It's not as easy as it is doing it on canvases. I don't have problems, but when the henna dries, before I'm sealing it on, the henna's quite weak, so it does crumble off, so you have to make sure that you're very soft.
I can see it being quite a fun thing for kids to learn as well, you know?
Yeah.
Is it something you'd do as children's workshops, maybe?
I think it would be quite difficult. I have been asked to teach, and I've said no, I don't think I'd be able to. I find it very difficult. I did try to come up with a syllabus, but it was very hard. And I remember my teacher telling me, I mean, he's the best, and he was telling me that it took him like 2 years to come up with a syllabus for henna, because it's like the hardest thing to teach, to be honest.
I suppose just to get their creativity flowing.
Maybe something simple, just to get them stimulated. That might be an interesting... Maybe we can invite you in and we'll do an experimental workshop with some of our youngsters at some stage and just see how it goes.
I mean, my son's always trying to copy me. He's like 2 years old. He's always trying to sort of sit there with a candle and a henna cone. I let him, he just does a little scribble.
Well, that's a fascinating thing. Children probably latch onto these kind of these worlds of imagination much quicker than adults do. And so that's nice to see that you're encouraging your youngster as well. But that's been a fascinating journey. It's given us a little inkling of how you went about getting involved in this. And you've taken it not just from being a hobby, but it's actually made you a little bit of money as well. And you've been educating people in what sounded like a Jewish area, and you're actually having to tell them about Islam. So it seems to be several birds you're knocking down with one stone here. Where's the future in terms of marketing this, and where do you see the future for pROG?
For Bespoke Henna? Definitely take it worldwide. I think we've got a small audience that we're working with at the moment, which is brilliant, and she's got a lot of success from it. But all the stuff that you've been talking to us about is quite inspiring, really, because if we can use it to educate the wider audience, or use it to get the history of our religion, or even just the history of henna across to the wider audience, then that's a brilliant thing. But I think we'd take it obviously a step at a time, establish ourselves a little bit, do it all the right way. Because
the fields are opening. Places like Doha, as you might or might not know, they're beginning to open up to the idea of Islamic culture. And Islamic culture can be good and bad. I mean, but in this instance, if it's used for a positive purpose, is within the bounds of Sharia, and kind of is educational, could be something which is used as an increasing way of educating society. On that note, I'm going to let you make one last comment, if there's any thoughts you have about your art that you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off. I think you've said it all, really, haven't
pretty
you?
Much.
You're pretty much
gobsmacked.
And Rabia, any final kind of thoughts or summaries about this whole kind of venture?
I think what you guys touched upon about taking a creative route is quite important, actually. I think everybody should not be afraid, as long as they know that they're within the bounds of their religion, should not be afraid to take a creative route into, for example, like Farah's taken the route into art. In the future, who knows, inshallah, we could be educating the wider society about Islamic history. So I think if you've got a route that you want to go down, there should be, you shouldn't be afraid to explore it.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to ask you, Farah, now to show us a little demonstration of how you do this work, just to give people a little bit of a practical idea. So on that note,